Hello everyone, that's Dmitry. I am on a business trip in St. Petersburg and today I am returning back to Moscow. I am going by train and trains from St. Petersburg to Moscow depart from this station. This is Moscow railway station in St. Petersburg.
Moskovsky railway station is located in the center of St. Petersburg. But when it was built in the 40s of the 19th century, this place was the outskirts of the city. At the same time, the other station was constructed in Moscow. Both stations connected St. Petersburg, which at that time was the capital of the Russian Empire, and Moscow, and were called Nikolaevsky railway station after Nicholay the First, the Russian emperor. The projects were identical, so the stations looked like twins, but today inside they are different. There is a timetable over there. As usual, I arrived at the station in advance, because I do not like to rush. For me, it's better to wait somewhere in a cafe than to run headlong. Also, I prefer drinking coffee instead of walking around messy streets after a heavy snowfall. This time, I dropped in at Stars Coffee, ex-Starbucks. Speaking about the weather, it's really not very good for taking a walk. It snowed all night, and in the morning snow began to melt. Now it has turned into a solid mess. I can imagine what a headache this is for utilities and how they hate this kind of weather. For me, this weather is also hateful, but unfortunately it is not uncommon in winter in the European part of Russia. I'd better stay inside the station. This is a big map showing rail connections between St. Petersburg and other cities. St. Petersburg is there. Recently, some places in the Ukraine or Europe are disconnected, but even though you can go to many places from St. Petersburg. In the center of the hall there is a monument to Peter the Great, the founder of St. Petersburg. In the Soviet era here was a monument to Lenin, but it was replaced in 1993. This time I am traveling with Sapsan. In the last video during a trip to Minsk I showed what the Lastachka swallow train looked like. Now you can see what Sapsan is. Sapsan is the Russian word for the bird peregrine. This is a pretty fast train. It covers the distance of 635 kilometers between St. Petersburg and Moscow in 3 hours and 55 minutes.
We're here to assist you throughout your journey. To ensure your safety,
Sapsan is a Siemens development, and now that Siemens has left Russia, the future of this train is not clear.
putting your trust in us.
In general, train is quite comfortable and modern, but once again I realized that in Japan trains are more friendly for passengers, because there you can always travel face forward in the direction of the train. In Europe or in Russia, manufacturers somehow do not think about this. On the other hand, Sapsan offers seats with a table that are convenient, for instance, for negotiations, which I haven't seen in Japanese bullet trains. On the way from St. Petersburg to Moscow, my train makes 2 stops. at Bologoye and Tver. On board you are requested to keep the noise level down, and once again it reminds me of trains in Japan. After almost 4 hours of travel, we finally arrived at the Leningradsky railway station in Moscow. In the place where you saw the monument to Peter the Great in St. Petersburg, there is a New Year tree in Moscow. As I said, earlier stations in St. Petersburg and Moscow were identical. But recently a mezzanine was built at the station in Moscow. So now the interior of the buildings is different. Also, at the Leningradsky railway station in Moscow there is such a beautiful painting. However, from the outside, both stations are still very similar.